Hi guys. I want to go a bit further with this whole sexual energy, creative energy, Madonna horror complex, porn magazines, especially in light of what's happening in Iran. I see posts about how we don't have as bad, and of course we don't, thank God, but and we still minimize and shame ourselves as women, and men do it too. I'm talking about the female experience because I'm a woman, born a woman, lived as a woman. I don't feel like I have business explaining what a man's, path is. I feel like I just want to talk to women in this. Well, men can listen, but I want to talk to women in this video because I know what it is to live in shame of our bodies as women. I grew up my parents didn't push Catholicism on us, but we went to Catholic schools. We went to the Catholic churches. There's no talk about pleasure there or intuition there or feelings there. And I just, when I look at a tree the other day, wow, look at that. Okay. The other day I was sitting on a bench at Bell Park. I'm always at Bell Park. And I was feeling very chaotic, very much oh, I have to make a fucking decision. I have to do this, anxiety. And I'm looking at the tree, just, meditating on the tree, enjoying the tree, just moving around in the wind. And I'm just this tree's not apologizing for moving around and feeling all, ooh, ooh. It's energy that wants to move. And we've been shamed from having feelings. We've been shamed from having sexual energy. We've been shamed. It doesn't make any sense. We're all born from parents who've had sex. It just if you need to think of it as a logical perspective right now, because it's too much maybe you struggle getting into your body. Maybe you struggle letting yourself to slow down, and some of this conversation is triggering. I don't blame you. Once upon a time, this conversation would have been triggering for me. But a shaman will ask you, a medicine man, a medicine woman will ask you, when did you last dance? When did you last sing? When did you last create? Our creative energy, sexual energy, call it creative energy if that floats your boat. If it's all the same thing. When we're children, we sing, we act weird, we move around to let energy bounce off of us and out of us and through us, and have tantrums because all the feelings, we're feeling creatures when we're not brainwashed, when we're not mind controlled, when we're not, if news did not exist, if we were, obviously this is going in an idealist, but just use your imagination. If the news did not exist, if we were not told what to believe, what to think, when did you stop believing that you were safe to dance, that you were safe to create? You're not born like that. That's conditioned out of you. And the truth is, a lot of people have been killed in the past for saying this kind of shit. So when I'm seeing what's happening in the world, I'm just gonna talk more. I found this one woman on Instagram, and I really like some of the practices she's encouraged, because it's all about coming into the body. And, getting in touch with your sensuality. And so, where the heck was I going with this? Yeah, people have been killed for saying these things in the name of religion, in the name of Christianity. I'm a follower of Christ consciousness. I am not a follower of Christianity, because Christianity has killed people for saying these things. whenever I hear someone say like fearing God, no, no. That's what got us here. That's what got women laying down in the hospital gurneys, not making primal movements, not feeling in power of their own bodies when they're giving birth. I can go on tangents. I had a whole thing set up before coming on here, but it's like if we were a culture, if we were like, they have stripped our culture away from us. How many of us know our ancestry? How many of us know what our great grandparents and so on did to pray, to dance, to move this energy out of us? How many of us are in touch with that? Not very many. Most of us don't fucking know. And that's sad. That cuts us off from like our God force, our true divinity. You know, I don't see anybody in Christianity telling you how to move through difficult feelings. I see a lot of people being dehumanizing and sounding like sociopaths, telling you that you're a victim for having feelings, and that they don't want to hear about it. Like, that's not God. That's not God speaking. I'm sorry, but I don't know. That's not God. That's shame. And that is what's evil. That is what's perpetuating evil. Shaming one another for having feelings, shaming one another. You know, when we're jealous of another woman for standing in her power, for dancing, for, you know, creating something, we're not born with that, but we've been conditioned to like shit on that person. We're not born like that. That doesn't come from children. There's one woman I've listened to before, and she's like, if we were not taught guilt, if we were not taught shame, if we were not taught to blame people, religion, if we were not taught to shit on people, those are not naturally occurring human feelings. Grief is. Feeling bad, feeling grief about how we treated somebody or hurting somebody, that's a natural human expression. Feeling anger about injustice, that is a natural human expression. That is a gift. You know, the story of Jesus, he flipped tables. He flipped tables for taxpayers. He didn't just like turn a blind eye. He fed the poor, he fed the hungry, he fed the homeless. If someone is shaming you for having a normal human experience, a natural occurring human expression of grief, of joy, that's not God speaking. I'm sorry, but... And it's not about staying in victim. It's not about staying in your poor story and like reliving. You know, it's like there's a balance, of course, but this, you know, this world's become very divisive and encouragement of sociopathic behavior. That's not God. That is not God speaking. God speaking, you know, you might have fears come up. You sit with your fear. You bring your fear to the table. Underneath that fear is what God is saying. Like your joy, you know, the part of you that maybe stopped dancing. I went to a school dance in middle school. Grade 8 maybe? Grade 7? Maybe grade 6. One of those grades. And I remember being made fun of for how I danced. And I carried shame about that, so I stopped dancing. And I used to dance all the time. And I still do now. Like, I've worked on that. But, like, that natural occurring expression, that's God, creative consciousness. The fear that comes up to protect us, it needs to be held. And that fear, which becomes shame, which becomes our shadow, is what we project on people and what recreates evil. It allows evil to exist because when it allows evil to exist, because that consciousness becomes about how much money I have in the bank. It becomes about me and my own at the expense of how other people feel. That doesn't matter to me anymore because I'm in fear. I'm in survival. And this is not about judging people in survival. I have my moments where I'm in survival, but it's taking a peek at it. Because when that goes unconscious, and that, you know, your shadow's going to come up in some way, shape, or form if you don't get a hold of it. You know, the fears that have protected you, they need to be held, they need to be loved up on, they need to be looked at, because they do become a source of what could be used for evil. Like, a lot of what's under our fears, our shame, those parts are protecting our true gifts. And our true gifts are what we were all born here with. That's God. That's, you know, our true essence. That is what we were each born here with. You know, for some it's teaching. Some have a knack for talking to people. Some have a knack for creating beautiful workshops and teaching people. Some people have a knack for dancing and teaching people how to get into their body. And these come online when we witness the fear, when we witness the parts that are trying to protect us, because we've been shamed for dancing, we've been shamed for being sensitive, we've been shamed for saying the thing that makes the adult uncomfortable, we've been shamed for primal movements as children. You know, maybe we were shamed for, like, expressing sexually in ways, or like our parents had shame about their own sexuality, so that got passed down onto us. The more things happen in the world, the more it makes sense to me to talk about these things and remind people, like, come back to the body. It's scary. I remember the first time coming back to my body, I was just like, what do you mean coming back? Like, you know, we're protecting ourselves, because the truth is, I don't know. I don't know what someone has lived through. I don't know what someone's past life is. You know, that tribal mindset of, like, what's she gonna think? It's all about protection. And that protection has to be loved up on. It has to be looked at. It needs a hug sometimes. It needs to be dialogued with. It needs to be journaled on. And, like, I don't want to shame our protective parts, our fear parts. I want to bring voice to the fact that as we age, those parts become rigid, and then they become a personality structure. And then we move around in life thinking that we're acting on our own accord, but we're actually acting based on the fact that 8-year-old Katrina was shamed for speaking her truth. So now when somebody else says she's upset or angry, I'm hyper triggered because I was never allowed to express my anger and truth. So now this person who's saying that they're angry and sad, fuck, how dare they? You know, that it's protection. And when unacknowledged, that protection becomes shadow. And that runs our life. You know, Carl Jung said, if we don't make the unconscious conscious, we'll call it fate. We'll call our lives fate, like it's just fate. But it's really, we're acting like mechanical robots because we're not acknowledging where our behaviors and actions are coming from. And a lot of them are shame-based. If we're living in survival mode, you know, I think a lot of people feel like they can't do anything right now, but I promise you the best thing you can do is to go sit with the trees, go touch grass, maybe snow, you know, breathe deeply, watch the thoughts. You know, like women in Iran, I feel like we have a duty as women to come back to our bodies in the Western world, especially if we have space to do so. And I know, like, you know, life gets hard. It feels like if you don't do these practices, it's really easy to get bogged down. Like, if I don't come back to my body, I get heady, I get into survival mode, I start to forget what I'm even talking about. Because the brainwashing's really strong. But, like, you know, if you feel like you can't do anything, what do you think your family needs as a mother, as a friend? What do you think is the best possible use of your time? You know, is it scrolling for an hour, or is it doing hip movements for an hour? Is it breathing deeply with your body? You know, one of the first practices I did, and I just like bawled my head off the first time, is something as simple as laying down, saying, "These are my feet," and you just take a deep breath with your feet. And then, "These are my ankles," and you just move up and down your body, and you just acknowledge, okay, these are my feet. And like, pay attention to your feet. These are my ankles. These are my little toes. And and you do your whole body, and what that does is it just reminds you, right, I'm here, my body matters. You know, yes, I want to get up and do something else because I'm uncomfortable, but I'm going to keep doing this anyways. And it just reaffirms to yourself that you're here, that you can be present for this moment, or at least, you know, take actions to get to that point. It's not an overnight process. Coming back to the body, it's a constant. Like, I have to do it daily if I don't want to get, you know, scattered. They don't teach this in school. They don't teach this at church. They don't teach this to children, how to come back to the body, how to be friends with your own body, how to really like be your own best friend. That is something we should learn from, like, you know, as soon as we can understand it. And this takes having mothers who live that, right? And, you know, like, my biggest fear with coming on these videos is, like, I'm not a mom, so I'm just like, all the people who are like oh, you're not a mom, how do you know? Because I've lived it. I've lived with childhood emotional neglect. I've lived with parents where we had a house, we didn't have a home. So my sharing this, that's where my inspiration comes from. So of course it's personal, right? Yeah. Anyway, if you've listened at all, thank you. Deep breaths. I really do feel the best thing we Western women can do is coming back to our bodies. You know, we weren't taught about all the people who've been murdered in the name of religion. That's purposeful. You know, we were never taught to feel the full expression of our emotions. We were never taught these things. So if these conversations are hard for you, know that it's not about judging. It's just about raising awareness and bringing some compassion to yourself in that space, because we were never told this. No one taught us this. No one taught us this. All my life I've been looking for a family, for a mom, for, you know, and I've had to bring that back to myself and give that to myself. So these conversations they're hard fought for me. They come from a really deep place of, like, just wanting better for people, you know, for other people and their families. And, like, I have the time and the space to sit with myself. So I spent a lot of time not talking about these things because of the fears.